Hey everybody, I had a little trouble with the button there, but welcome to another episode of 49 Volts. Your host is always Josh, and today we have an amazing guest. We have Amber Fallon, who has been a sales engineer and before that a technical support engineer. So she's been involved with technology and helping people for almost 20 years it looks like, back to like '06. So welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I'm very fascinated. I think your most recent role is at Shooter Detection Systems. So we have a lot of security folks in the audience here. So very relevant to everybody. And that's a great product that everybody's familiar with. So, I've been in sales, I've been in product and marketing, of course. I always had a different idea of what a sales engineer, I hate to say it, depending on what role I had. I feel like my expectations always change. And I feel like customers always have their own view of what a sales engineer is because of course their interactions with you, I think a lot of times are answering questions or, providing demos. For someone like you that has so many years of being a sales engineer and so much success with that, if you ran into somebody that said, what is that? Like, how would you describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate the fact that sales engineering has really grown in the past decade that I've been doing this role personally. It used to be that you go to like a party or a networking event and people would just kind of wrinkle their brows and say, sales engineer, what's that?
Right.
I like to think of myself as a good old can of WD-40. I'm here to remove friction in the sales process wherever it is. Or if you want to use a superhero analogy, because I'm a kind of a big comic book nerd, I am the Robin to the salesperson's Batman. I am not here to steal the show. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I'm here to make you look good and to support you and do whatever it takes to help you do what you need to do. And if that's demoing, that's one thing I can do. But there's a lot of or more out of the box ways that sales engineers can be helpful rather than just doing the demos, answering the RFPs, and doing floor plans, which I did a lot of at Shooter Detection Systems. I think it really comes down to being the support person for the boots on the ground. People in the field out there meeting with customers, working on things, doing things. And I'm here like Barbara Gordon as Oracle, just kind of in the background, making things work, doing research, putting together presentations, getting things done so that you can do what you do best.
I love it. And I think, one of the things that I really appreciated definitely from the product and marketing side was, sales engineers, of course, you spend a lot of time in front of the customer and getting reactions from them, on the new features, or maybe it's the first time they've seen the platform and the products. But where that relates to this next question is, of course, we often hear about the importance of empathy in design. And I think that goes into any kind of product, but certainly when we're talking about software, that's like one of the core principles of software design. So considering how important security is and what's at stake, I mean, do you think that empathy is even more paramount and more important in the security industry?
Yeah, great question. I absolutely do. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're in the security industry, you're doing a lot more than, selling a piece of software. You're selling something that can potentially save lives, protect people's property, keep people safe. Empathy is kind of at the forefront of that because you're very aware of what the technologies you're selling do and how beneficial they are to have. But at the same token, some of these tools, Shooter Detection Systems is a great example. It's an amazing product, but it's a product that when you sell it, you hope you never have to use it.
Correct. Yeah.
And there's a lot of empathy that's involved in that, especially when you're talking about it. I spend a lot of time talking to schools, and you need to have empathy in that approach to that because it's a scary, scary thing to deal with. Well, you got to prepare for the possibility that there could be a gunshot event, and you want to protect your students and your staff and anybody else who might be present during that kind of a situation. So empathy first is a great approach, especially when you're dealing with something as sensitive as protecting life.
And so back to the first point, you're in front of the customer a lot. So do you think that, there's a huge responsibility on your end to make sure that you're providing the right kind of feedback to the engineering group, or how does that work? Because you were in several different organizations in that role. So did you see was it very similar as far as the expectations of you providing some of that feedback? Because empathy shouldn't be totally imagination, right? There should be some data, to support what they think that the customer may need, right?
Absolutely. And that's one of the areas I feel sales engineers can be very valuable is we should speak the same language the engineers speak. And certainly that feedback is feedback and it's valuable wherever it comes from, be it the customer, sales, customer support, anybody. But a sales engineer can translate that into something actionable that a product team or an engineering and development team can then take and do something with. So being able to not only understand and empathize with what the issue is, but to be able to translate it into something usable is very valuable.
No, I would agree. So something in the marketing world that comes up a lot is authenticity, right? I think people now really want to, like, it really stands out when somebody's being authentic and sincere and genuine. So that's very important from a marketing perspective. But like, what about in the workplace? I mean, do you think that really matters there, or should we just pretend to be whoever we think we should be based on the environment we're in?
Authenticity is huge. I'll be extremely honest. I am, there's an old sales acronym, WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. That's me. And I wear my heart on my sleeve. I have no poker face. So for me specifically, I think authenticity is paramount to me being able to do my job. I need to bring my whole self to work, and I'm a cheerleader at heart. I was a cheerleader when I was younger, and it shows. I'm enthusiastic, I'm engaged, I'm passionate, and that's very present. I need a team I can cheer for. So since I've been looking for a new position, one of the top things on my list is a team I can cheer for. Being your authentic self is really important to that. And, at the end of the day, people don't want to buy from robots, unless they want to, go to Amazon and buy an Arlo system or whatever. People want to buy from real people that they can connect with and build relationships with. And that comes from a foundation of authenticity. People can tell when you're being fake and when you've got a mask on. Now, that's not saying you should, be the same person that you are with your buddies or your spouse when you're at work. Everybody gets to see a different side of you, but that's saying they get to see you, bring you always.
No, I like that. I think, in every relationship, I think it's a little bit of a shortcut in a good way. Because I think, if the more layers of nonsense we surround ourselves with, putting up walls and pretending, I think people really, I just think it's in our nature. We want to figure out who we're really dealing with and what they're all about. And I think they're going to spend a lot of time trying to figure you out. And I think when you can just kind of show up and be yourself and they feel that, I think that it's a good energy. I think it's that WD-40 you were talking about. I think, being yourself and not trying to be anything else. And you're never going to win over everyone anyways. So,
and can you imagine how much effort it takes to be this, remember what kind of fake person you were? And
right.
I don't have that in me. Sorry. I gotta focus on my job.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'd be a Hollywood actor at that point, right?
Right.
You'd have to be Brad Pitt or somebody like that to be able to go into character in and out like that. But, well, so I am curious. I mean, you started out, it looks like, more on the tech support side. So you're very technical. Was that kind of your lead into sales engineering, but you wanted to get out and talk to people in person? Or, I mean, what did that look like in your career where you went from one type of role to the other?
Yeah. So I've been a sales engineer for 10 years this month. And that's crazy to me. But like most of the sales engineers I knew back then, it was completely by accident. I was pitch hitting for somebody that desperately needed a technical person to step in on a sales engagement. And I just kind of fell in love with it from there. It's kind of the nexus of everything that I love doing. It's problem solving, it's fixing things, it's getting to be technical, getting to build relationships and talk to people and learn new things and do new things. And it just kind of takes it up to that next layer that you kind of get boxed in when you're in support. You're kind of stuck with this rigid set of rules and things you can do. When you step out of that and step into being a sales engineer, the world just opens up and there's so much more ability to really solution and work with people and come up with new out of the box ways to approach things and different ways that you can do things. And that's really exciting to me. Plus, one of my deeply held beliefs is everyone supports sales. If you work at a company that has anything, sales keeps the lights on. If it wasn't for the sales team, you wouldn't get paid. So whether you're in HR, finance, marketing, whatever you do, there's a bullet point there that says you support the sales team. And I'm happier to be closer to that end goal.
No, I think that's a great point. And I mean, from a marketing perspective, it's very important. We're establishing the brand and the reach and all of those things. But, we're in what I would consider to be really a channel focused industry when we talk about security or any of these low voltage industries, meaning like really the quality of your product and your company comes down to the salesperson in the region. I mean, I was an integrator for years, and there were some good products that I just didn't like the salesperson or didn't trust them. I just didn't have a great relationship with them. And there were products that I thought were maybe okay or weren't perfect, but I knew that I had great support and just had a great relationship with that salesperson. So, I mean, to your point, keeping the lights on, I mean, the RSMs and sales directors that are out there in the field, I mean, they're everything. They're really they are, I feel like the front line, and the sales engineer really are the front line experience that customers are going to have with that product.
Absolutely. And at that point, they're the product. So is support. I mean, as an integrator yourself, it's so important to know that when you sell something, not only is it a great product that you know that you can stand behind, but if something goes wrong, that company is going to be there to back you up. And that
Right.
product is there, that support rather is there as part of the product offering. So I'd say it's kind of a package deal.
I would agree. And do you think, a little bit off topic, maybe, I mean, I was still in sales initially when COVID happened.
Mhm.
I mean, what was your feeling on that? I personally, like, I'm okay with, I mean, we're doing it right now. I mean, I'm okay with remote discussions, but man, I think I lost something not being able to go out and see people in person and, I don't want to say touch and feel in that way, but I mean, just, be in proximity and, have that presence. I mean, I felt like there was something lost there. I mean, did you experience that, or were you, because some people liked it better?
I think there's a good mix. I think there's definitely a need for in person as well as the convenience and the power of remote. Working at Shooter Detection Systems, I was the only sales engineer, which was cool, but it was also sometimes a little, I'm dealing with people in California, dealing with people all over the country, at least. And that wouldn't really be quite as possible without the power of remote meetings. I can't get off a
Sure.
meeting in California and then hop to one in Florida if I have to be physically there. But by that same token, there are definitely things that you need to be in person for. Conferences and trade shows are huge. That's a great way to fill your top of funnel, get your brand awareness out there, and I love them. I am a huge brand cheerleader. I make earrings with my company logo. I paint my nails. I have shoes with the company logo on them. I go all out, and I think it's a really good way to engage with people, and you need to be in person to do that. I also think there's definitely something to be said for, in the security industry specifically, seeing something. I can't tell you how many times it was challenging to try and design a system or plan something working with an integrator. I'm not quite getting it in my head the way the space looks or the way we need to place
Yeah.
a sensor to get the right coverage. And then you see it in person, you're like, oh, I get it. There's a bank of elevators there, or that column isn't quite the way I thought it was on the floor plan, and the complexities
Right.
of that. There's no way to do that without being in person. I also think there's a lot of value in more casual, like sales dinners, taking your vendors out or your vendors taking you out.
Right.
People get a little bit more relaxed and they'll have some really deep and meaningful conversations that way. And another way that you just won't get from a remote virtual meeting, a half hour on a Zoom.
I think I would agree with all of that. I think it does help you be more efficient because normally you've got to try and plan your meetings so that you're going to go from one place to the next, and you almost can't let that meeting go too long, even if you're having a great conversation, because you won't make it to the next one. We all know what that's like. Once you
And there's
start being
traffic
late to
or
one, you're late to
weather.
all. Yeah, it's a bad experience. But like you said, I mean, you really get to know. I mean, I believe the relationships are what are so important. Again, that's where that faith comes, that someone's going to be there when you need them. Heck, they come out here when they don't have to, right? I mean, I think that's part of that, that courtship that you have is okay. They come out, they do lunch with us, they come to the office and show us things. When I have a problem, I have a comfort level that there's a human being that I know that's going to come out and see me. But there was some efficiency, I think, with the online meetings. The one thing I will tell you I found was that when I booked in-person meetings, I would never have anyone just not be there. Sometimes someone would have to maybe say, can you come a little later? Can you come tomorrow morning? But I would never have somebody just kind of not be there. And I felt like there's a lot of that once it went to like the Zoom meeting approach, where you would just be there. And I had to come up with a rule, right? Everybody had one, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, or, I guess they're not coming. Did you experience that, or was that maybe just me?
No, I definitely experienced that too. But I do think another thing in favor of remote work is that companies can find the best possible talent regardless of where they are. As a
Yeah.
sales engineer, I'm happy to travel. It's part of what I do, and I enjoy it. I love going to new places, trying new food, meeting new people. So the fact that I'm willing to travel basically anywhere in the country or sometimes the world, wherever you need me, um, but you can hire me here just north of Boston and you're in San Francisco. If you limit yourself to that little, 50 miles people are willing to commute just in San Francisco, you're going to be missing out on a lot of talent, including me. So I think that
Yeah.
opens up a lot of doors.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're a startup and or a
Yeah.
younger company, like you're saying, you were covering, the whole country. I've worked with sales engineers that have had to do that. That is stressful, but yeah, I mean, if you were, it was almost a detriment to be in person, honestly, when you're trying to cover that much territory because you just
And
can't
you
do
got
it.
to check fire code in 49 different states.
Yeah, that's the gift that never ends. Um, yeah, and then they're real funny about UL listening, like in the Pac Northwest,
Oh,
as
yeah.
far as what's required, how it must be labeled, and what they consider an assembly to be. So,
And what the
yeah, I
central
mean,
stations have to be listed as. Yeah, it gets state to state, gets a little kind of crazy just how much variance there is from place to place.
yeah, for sure. And I think you said you're in Boston, right? So, I mean, I feel like I've always heard Boston's very strict
Very.
in its own ways.
Yes. Very, very strict here.
Yeah, very. It makes sense. I used to be in the NFPA. I was on the 730 and 731 committees, and that's not far from you there
Yep.
in that area. So, um, okay, so you've worked in that role in multiple industries, right? Same role, but we're talking about different industries, different kind of products. They're all tech. I mean, do you feel like the security industry is a lot different than the others, or do you think that it was
Oh,
very similar?
I feel like there's a lot of Venn in the diagram, but the security space definitely has its own kind of vibe. What really stands out to me about security is people. And I know that's kind of a cliche answer, but the people that I got to work with in the security industry were some of the most passionate, mission driven people I've ever worked with. And there's this sense of community that comes into play when you're doing something that matters. You're not just here to hit a number, you're helping organizations protect things. And if you're
Right.
talking about cybersecurity or physical security or life safety, it's kind of all one big bucket. But that sense of urgency and that sense of doing something that really is meaningful at the end of the day, that's just a very different feeling. And I love being part of it. It definitely forced me to level up technically as well. I mean, very early in my career, I worked at a large national grocery chain as help desk and supporting physical things like meat scales and register systems. But then I was just software for years. And coming into shooter detection systems, one of the things I really loved was, hey, there's this physical thing. It's a real thing in the real world that does stuff. And I was not even a full month into the job. I think it was 3 weeks before I had to go do my first on-site demo. So here I am packing up sensors and Cat5 and my laptop and going down to a gun range in Maryland, setting these things up and doing it live and physical. And it definitely forced me out of my comfort zone and gave me
Yeah.
a new skill set that, I really loved. And, it's more than just the technology, more than just the industry, diving into complex problems, dealing with a variety of different people. Because I mean, you've been in sales engagements in the security world. You've got administrators. You're putting something on someone's network, so you need to be able to assure their security people and their IT people that you're not going to break anything or cause any problems. And talking to the people who are going to use the tools every day. It's a variety of different people that you get to work with, a variety of different technology acumen, and a variety of different skill levels with that technology. So it's kind of a broad scope, but a very narrow what's the right way to say this? It's a broad group of people with a very focused, very narrow concern,
Yeah.
just different ways to approach it. And that was a very different kind of challenge for me. And I absolutely loved it.
You mentioned that first demo and being ready for that. I mean, I remember like a decade ago, I remember the first company that hired me was Vicon, over on the manufacturer side. And I remember talking to the CEO, and he said, we're pretty excited about you. We think this was a good hire, but a lot of times integrators don't really understand how to cross that bridge. They don't really know what's involved, and a lot of times they just don't make it. And they said, we got a good feeling about you. And I almost felt like I ruined it at first, because I think overall I really did get it. And I have a lot of family and friends that work for manufacturers. So I feel like I saw it better than others would. But the one thing I didn't put enough thought into, I always took for granted, when people show up and do those demos, what that experience is like. And the first demo I did, boy, I just bombed it. I mean, nothing worked. And I really didn't put the effort in to have a routine down. I didn't put any thought into, I mean, I already understood the software, but I didn't think about like how to take them through the journey, how to kick it off, what order to go in, if I want to show something, which of those cameras should I click on? Where do I have some footage, for example, where I could demonstrate that? I mean, I messed the whole thing up, and I learned a lot from it. I mean, that never happened to me again. I was always super prepared. I was super embarrassed. I think the local reps, the rep agency, those guys probably still hate me. I think I probably lost that deal for them. But I mean, from your perspective, that first time, I mean, did you go through that kind of a situation, or did you just over prepare and nail it the first time and everything was perfect?
I give 110% no matter where I am. My motto in life, whether it's work or I love to bake, it's baking and every interaction. My motto is make things better. And I bring that to whatever I'm doing. I was definitely prepared. I went to my local gun range. I'm a member the night before, and I tested out my sensors. I made sure everything worked. And from my experience being a sales engineer, I know how important it is to be able to tell a good story. So making sure your narrative flow works. I had an amazing coworker who did our actual shooting for us in person at the office. So I made sure we had some good shots of him queued up in the camera feed, so that if for whatever reason we couldn't do everything right then, internet or outages or whatever, I could connect
Right.
to clips and be able to show it seamlessly. I always believe in preparing and making sure you have a backup plan and making sure you're prepared for all eventualities. Internet can go out, your technology isn't working, there's some kind of problem here, and you can't let that stop you.
I like that. Also, having some good dad jokes kind of off to the
Yeah.
side when something's going wrong, just dazzle them with giggles for a
Oh,
minute. And
that's so true. Puns are the highest form of
uh,
comedy, and I do love puns. And if all else fails, I have three really cute dogs, so pull out the dog pictures and distract
there
me
you
with.
go. Yeah, look at that, and I'll be over here fixing what's going on. But
Yeah.
that was the one thing, and that's why I've always had such respect for sales engineers. Is it's a lot of what you're doing is the demo. And when you're in sales, sometimes you can kind of fall back to, oh, I'm just the dumb salesperson. Ha ha ha. Can't trust me with anything. But I feel like the sales engineer doesn't get that same
No.
license. They kind of expect that you're very technical. So
Yep. Yep. And you definitely run into the people who want to test that and push it to the furthest limits. I've occasionally had it happen where people will ask questions that are like the last thing you can imagine. Like you can tell they're Googling what's the most difficult question I can ask about product X. And you can't let that throw you either. So you got to get really comfortable with confidently saying, that's a great question. I don't know, but I'll have an answer for you by the end of the day. And then as long as you do it, you're good.
if you've got 5 people in a room that you're demoing for, there is somebody in that crowd that their mission,
Oh, yeah.
and then it's not even that they're rooting against you.
It
They
can
they
be.
might even like the product, sometimes maybe, but I think they feel that the value that they can add or the personal enjoyment they're going to get is they just want to try and trip you up somewhere. It makes them feel good about themselves. I mean, that's what you have to kind of learn. It's not anything to take personal, I think a lot of times just for themselves, like they're trying to show their boss that they're adding value because see how smart I am. I thought of something the manufacturer didn't even think of. I mean,
I've
you gotta
also
be
been in
ready for that.
situations where someone in that room has their eye on a competitor and they prefer them to you. So they're
For
going to
sure.
try and tear you down in front of their decision makers, their bosses. You can't let that happen. You can't let it knock you out of your stride, or where would you be?
Yeah. Is that something so then when you were kind of new to the security industry, was that something you kind of had to learn the hard way and then go out and try to research who those competitors are? Because I think a lot of us that are in the industry for a long time, you just kind of natively, organically kind of know about all these other products. Maybe you don't know everything, but nobody's going to throw a name out there and you haven't heard of them or have some idea about them. I mean, did you run into some roadblocks there and then have to go and study the competition real hard to catch up? I mean, what was that like as somebody when you were new to the industry?
Well, I again believe in being over prepared and stepping into the industry. I really, really wanted to make sure that I covered all my bases. Shooter detection systems took a chance on me coming from outside of security without the security experience. So I was desperate to prove myself. I did so much research on every possible aspect of the product. The competitors in the space, the people who said that they could do what we did, the people who said you don't need what they do because we do this different thing that's better, making sure that I had a really good understanding of the existing players in the space, the startups, who knew their stuff and who didn't. And one of the things that I did as an exercise to like prepare myself, I made my own battle cards for our
Yeah,
product versus a
smart.
bunch of compare. It was useful. It's good to have. And it was a great exercise for me to be able to put myself in that space and say, okay,
Yeah.
how did they win against us? Okay, now how do we win against them? What are the differences? What really makes sense at the end of the day? What's going to make a big difference versus what's just a nice, flashy thing to say?
Right.
So having a good understanding of that as early on as I could really prepared me and set me up for success.
No, I love that. That's always one of those battles too. Every company I've been in, like who's really responsible for the battle cards? Is it the product manager, the sales engineer, marketing? And I've
Yes.
been in spots where I've been all of that. So you just kind of have to do it.
Yeah. And it was a great, great learning opportunity for
It
me.
is. It is. I would say that, it's the easiest, hardest thing to do. Because sometimes it's a combination of what's publicly available and then having the back channels to get the rest of the information. And it's depending on what product you're selling. I would think something like shooter detection systems, you have a more limited, maybe number of rivals that you need to study up on, although that number's, I believe, growing. Selling a VSAS and ACAS, now you're looking at, all the video solutions, both cloud or not, all the access control solutions, cloud or not, and how they integrate together, you know, cloud or not. I mean, it's a lot to keep up with and it changes. There's
Yeah.
always new entrants, there's always changes to the product lines. I mean, it to me, it felt like something that probably in a larger organization should be a full-time job for more than one person. It's a lot to keep up on. So that's impressive that you kind of knew to do that up front. So that's two ways you're a lot smarter than me because I just had to learn the hard way that, oh, I should have thought of that.
Well, I think we're all a product of either things we've learned the hard way or things we've lucked into. We're a beautiful mosaic of mistakes and messy situations and things we overcome. So everybody learns different ways. And I think that at the end of the day, you're a beautiful mosaic of those mistakes. They're part of that cloth that makes you you.
I'm pretty sure beautiful mosaic of mistakes was my nickname in college. But so let's help some of the young pups out there. I mean, I'm guessing at some point, if not even your most recent, but at some point I was probably this person. You're in a demo, you're in a meeting with a customer, and you have a salesperson that is just going off the map. I mean, they are, yes, of course it does that. No, we do it better than this other. And no, we'll just throw that in for free. They just get into that mode, and then they're just saying anything. And that's not what you want to do.
No,
That's
it's
not going
not.
to be good for anybody in the long run, the customer or you. I mean, how do you handle that as a sales engineer? Do you feel like you have a responsibility? I know you feel like you're there to assist that salesperson, but do you see like part of assisting them is trying to save them from themselves so they don't go over a cliff, or do you have to kind of hang back and talk about it later? I mean, what do you do there?
Sure. So I think there's a sort of a twofold approach here. The first thing is, what's that saying about a pound of, wait, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? I like to build a relationship with my salespeople and have a really good understanding of what the likely pitfalls might be. Are they
Mhm.
the kind that are going to be like, here's this brand new feature I just heard about. Let me show it to you right now. And I'm like, it's not even in beta yet. Um, but you
That's
know,
definitely me.
when you know that's the thing that might come up, you can have that conversation. I also think, especially if you're going to be in person, a pre-meeting strategy session is great. We're not going to write a script, but let's talk about the bullet points. Let's talk about what our story is. Let's talk about who does what, so we can be true partners and present things in sync. And we have a good understanding of what beat points we're going to talk about and what we're maybe not going to talk about because maybe it doesn't show so well or it doesn't fit really well into this particular solution. So that is the first thing I'd say. Prepare, plan, have regular meetings with your AEs. And
Yeah,
some of that does come down to the size of the AE team you're supporting. It's easier if you're a smaller team. If you're with a larger team, it can be a little more
for sure.
challenging. But a regular cadence, just a coffee chat in person or virtually, let's just chat. Let's talk about what opportunities you're working. Let's talk about the strategy and the vision and how we're going to do it. And then I always insist on a 15-minute meeting before that call, just to get our ducks in a row and make sure everyone's in agreement. Now, the other side of that coin is stuff happens. Maybe it's your AE. Maybe it's that guy who really wants your competitor and is going to try and throw a monkey wrench in the gears or a spanner in the works if you're across the pond. Um, Roll with the punches. I think that's a really
Yeah,
important and valuable skill for anyone in sales, whether you're a sales engineer or an RSM or an AE. Be prepared to be a united front, kind of like, parents almost. Don't
yeah,
have mommy and daddy need to be a very, very united front in front of your child. And then you discuss things afterwards and come up with a strategy to patch any cracks or fix any things that happen that maybe we shouldn't have overpromised. But the united front is really important. There is nothing that will sink a deal faster than two people from the same company fighting in front of a customer. Never,
for
ever
sure.
united front
Yeah,
all.
yeah, that flag's not even red. That's like a whole other color. That's a tough one. And
That's the way your
honestly,
brigade at your sale and
yeah.
ducking.
No, I mean, I'm not going to name names, but I mean, as an integrator, somebody was on the other side of those meetings for years before. I mean, that's definitely happened before, and I never wanted to work with those companies. I mean, I would never talk to them again. I mean, because right away you're just like, well, there's problems,
They're going to get
going
their
on
house
there.
in
So
order, get on the same
yeah,
page. And, these people I'm trusting to have a relationship with each other. Is that the kind of relationship I can expect them to have with me? Are we going to
yeah.
be trying to work with an end user and they're going to be fighting with me? Like, that's the last thing you want.
No, I agree. Well, I like, again, that's a great approach. I mean, like you said, it really is always about preparedness. We can avoid most of the problems by thinking ahead and having a good process and working well together. And I agree. I think also as you work on, especially on smaller teams, you work with the same people a lot. I think you kind of become your own little magic show in a way. You
Yeah.
kind of you know what each other's going to do, and you know where to step in, and you kind of know when they're not on their game.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're not feeling well. Another thing people don't think about until you do it. I mean, some days you're just not there. You don't feel well. You didn't sleep well. You've traveled too much. You're not remembering things as well as you do. You're a little bit off, and having that other person there that can kind of step in and help you through and get you back on the mark. It's just those relationships are so, I mean, those sales engineers I worked with, I still all consider them all friends. We still stay in touch. I mean, you do develop a close relationship.
You do. And it's great and it's really powerful. I mean, you can learn so much from other people. I've learned new skills, new recipes, new dad jokes,
Yeah,
just by talking to people and building those relationships. And, professionally speaking, you never know when that kind of a connection can help you find your next role if you're in need of it, or when you can help someone else.
for
So
sure.
building those relationships and strengthening them and maintaining them is also a huge advantage to you. And they might be, you never know, they could be your next buyer. just because you work together now doesn't mean you always will. And the security industry, especially, seems very small and very interconnected.
It's a big industry, but it's a small village. And sometimes we're competitors and then we're on the same team. And sometimes we're on the opposite sides of the transaction. I mean, it's another reason that, you can't have enough friends. Always be looking to make friends and build good relationships and not, there's never any reason to be adversarial with anybody. It doesn't
100% agree.
doesn't help. And, maybe your boss someday.
Yeah, could be your boss, or you could be sitting across the table from them at a convention, or maybe they'll
Yeah.
be buying from you, or you could be an integrator down the road and they could be installing your stuff. Like always, it kind of ties back to where I say make things better, make relationships better. Spend the time to learn about people and just build relationships. And when it comes more naturally over time, like anything else, it's a skill you can build up. And it's so valuable in every aspect of life.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you for coming on today. I've really enjoyed talking about this, and I think you've got some really great experience and great perspectives on things. And I think, um, yeah, just kind of helped me have a little trip down memory lane too. I just kind of reliving some of these moments, especially the bad demo. I think I kind of pushed that out of my head. There's some type of medical term for hiding bad memories, but that definitely popped back into my head. But speaking of making good connections, I know you are looking for your next role right now. Obviously, you have a great experience. You're a great person to talk to. I can tell you're very intelligent. Everybody I know that knows you is just, I got nothing but wonderful things to say. So if somebody sees you on here and would like to connect with you, how would they find you?
LinkedIn is probably the best way. I'm Amber Fallon. If you put in the URL, it's linkedin.com/in/Amber L Fallon. And that's the best place to reach me. I'm always on LinkedIn.
Awesome. I know I see you there a lot. So always appreciate, you put a lot of good things out there that I really enjoy. So we'll also put your contact information in the video description. So thanks again for coming on. Love your background. Very festive. I really like it. And for the rest of you, we will have more episodes coming up soon. But until then, thanks so much for joining us. See ya.